What's going on, fam? It's your brother Lawrence here with another episode of Watch God Work. In every episode, we get the distinct pleasure and honor to speak to a brother or sister that's doing exceptional work in every field of human endeavor. And today, it is no different. I'm here with my sister, our sister, Ariel Atkins. What's going on, sis?
What's going on? I'm good. How are you?
Yo, I'm solid. I'm doing good. We're chopping it up
Good.
offline. We got the Hookem family in the building. So we're not going we gonna still lie y'all in the room. We're gonna lie y'all in the room. You know what I mean? But we there's a different type of love. We, we,
Yeah.
we we bleed burnt orange and volleyballs in the final four, but that's another conversation.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But we've talked offline about how souped I am about this conversation, like every conversation. But I think in particular, I grew up with a deep love for women's basketball because my sister's bald and they played with Adjah Jones, went to
Mhm.
Connecticut, then Connecticut was the squad, and Texas was the squad, and then you all know the joint. You know what I'm saying? It's just like Tennessee
Yeah.
and so I fell in love with it early. And I think through my journey, obviously, track and field, brought me to Texas for a season of my life, and was grateful to be there on the 40 acres. But because of my love, I got introduced to Ariel, for a minute, right? Obviously, we're 2021. It's some time since the McDonald's All America I peaked her at. But, I think watching her play, but beyond her play, was especially over this past year and change. I just think hearing her and seeing, not only hearing her on the court, she got her ring and everything, but just seeing her lean into, I think, the moment that we're living in. And I think it just gave me more curious to understand her story, all the way back to Duncanville, Dallas, Texas born. And I just there was a consistent theme to her life that I was like, I didn't know, like, of God, and her
Mhm.
being so generous with her words and very reverent about God, and God kind of guiding that. And so it was just refreshing to have this conversation and connect. But obviously, I can't do your story justice. So if we're going to kick it off, who is Ariel Atkins?
Yeah. Whew. I mean, that's a heavy question.
Mm,
So I'll just go off the top of what just popped in my head. Definitely someone who is in tune with who she is,
mm,
and obviously get that from following my identity through Christ. I think that's one of the most important things to me,
mm,
and it's something that my mom instilled in us at a very young age. But
mm,
I think as I've gotten older, I've had to really find God for myself.
mm.
Because it's different when your mama telling you to read your Bible versus when you starting trying to read it on your own.
Yep.
It's different, a lot different. But that's definitely finding my identity through Christ and allowing Him to lead me in various ways. I'm working on all the ways. I ain't gonna say sit here and act like He lead me. I have to be vulnerable to it. So definitely somebody's learning how to do that. Super big on my family. Don't cross my family. You cross them, you crossing me.
I love
I rock
it.
with my family hard. Yeah, I've got a really big family.
Mm,
A lot of cousins, and I love each and every single last one of them. Specifically, my immediate family, my grandparents. That's big to me. And then kind of a basketball nerd.
mm,
I
mm.
love it. I've been playing since I was about 5. I really enjoy the game, and I think that's one of the reasons I've been able to just get better over my careers because I just love doing it. I love being in the gym, and then I love nature.
Mm.
I don't know where to put that. I just love it. Love being outside. Love grass, trees, and then on top of that, I love to learn about any and absolutely everything. So
Mm.
that's kind of just a glimpse of, I guess, who I am.
It's a small glimpse, but it's such a refreshing glimpse because you gave us the land. I didn't know the land. I didn't know the outside thing. I'm gonna ask you some questions on that.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
But yeah, you have a number of siblings. Even from extended family
Hmm.
side, that's obviously learning that for the first time now. But growing up in a house where there are siblings and there's activities, sometimes a lot of the, let's say, early interests sometimes I feel like they're passed down. That's the story you often hear, where
Mhm.
it's kind of like, all
Mhm.
right, because my oldest sibling did this, I did this. Because my oldest
Right.
sibling got these
Yeah.
sneakers, I'm getting them too. So
Yeah.
how much was just just kind of early interest, but also early, um, you know, just curiosity around
Mhm.
basketball, How much was it
Yeah.
like? It was individual, or was like, some of it was a little passed down. Then I kind of took it on myself. What was
hmm
that like?
Yeah, well, my sister actually played in the league for a little bit, and
Okay.
I'm not really sure if I was like watching her and super excited about doing it. Because she didn't really enjoy it much. Like my parents bought a goal, and I was the one outside on it because like I was like, oh, this is fun. Like get to go outside. Like I get to play a little bit. But actually, my coach at my private school back when I was around 4 or 5 years old, was like, oh, you should play basketball. You should ask your mom. And I asked my mom. My mom, like, of course, as most mothers do when kids are talking, they're just like, all right, like I heard you, but whatever. And then my coach was pretty adamant. She was like, no, like she should really play basketball. And I have no idea why she was like that.
Mm.
Maybe she thought I could play, but 100% I doubt it. Like I was 4 years old. Like what am I doing at 4 years old?
Mhm.
As making a coach be like, oh yeah, she's gonna be this in the future. She was just very adamant about it. And then once I got in it, my mom actually ended up having to coach me because we didn't have a coach for that division. So my mom, still to this day, knows nothing about basketball. But as all moms do, she stepped in when her baby needed her, and so she was able to coach one of my teams. And then I just kept playing, kept growing, kept getting better, and really just started to fall in love with the game and more so like the progress of it, of what you kind of learn along the way and learning how to get better at things is still the most fun part of the game for me.
Mm. It's actually refreshing. We just had a conversation, amazing sister,
Hmm
around looking back on, you know, our lives and those things that you
Yeah,
feel are coincidental, but you're like, that actually doesn't make sense, but it makes God sense. Like, so why was,
that part, that part,
yeah,
that
I
part.
mean, like, why was she so
Yeah.
adamant? Maybe, like,
hmm
is like maybe God touched her, and that's what she
hmm
needed early on. But I always find that's so amazing, even with that. I think so. I'm holding the basketball in one hand because we're gonna go deeper in terms of that and just kind of how that
hmm
accelerated, throughout your career. But then the other part, which you spoke to a bit, was just your relationship with God and what the genesis was, right? And so I can
hmm
imagine for many people when you hear this, if they're not from Dallas area or they're not from the area, they, the understanding often is like South. You grew up in a church. At least you kind of like 80s,
Yeah,
90s baby.
everybody.
Even early 2000s
Right.
baby. Like you grew up in the church, and so there was a culture of faith, culture of Christianity that you always did. Um, but then
hmm
often there's then the view of like there was like two phases you would hear. Like sometimes people say like, all right, I had my like parental obedience phase where they putting the seed and all that good stuff, but then I had to own it for myself. What was kind of that?
Right.
What was that journey a bit in a bit more detail that you kind of talked to before?
Yeah. It was a tough one, and I'll say that
Mm,
because we're kind of in the times now where people are they're just free, man. Like they're like,
mm,
this is what I'm gonna do. I could care less if it's on the internet or not. People are just free,
mm,
and it makes you kind of think. It made me think in college, like the difference between spirituality and religion.
mm,
And I feel like a lot of the times humans we take religion and we force it to be something to where we can control people, and it's like
mm,
it's tough because you can't really profess God's love and God's favor and God's faith that way, in my personal opinion,
mm,
because it makes people not want to be a part of it.
mm,
And it's like I had to get down to the root of it for myself. It was like God is love. Like that's what I always come back to. Like no
mm,
matter if it's trying to talk to somebody who believes in a different religion, talking to somebody who thinks I'm insane, or
mm,
talking to people that are like, you know, crown themselves as the God royal Christians. You know what I'm saying?
mm,
Like at the end of the day, for me, my self obedience came back to God is love. So my
mm,
obedience doesn't come from me just wanting to follow rules. And I think I
mm,
had to learn that around, I want to say it was around 18, maybe 19, where I just got to a point to where it felt like it was a rule book. And yes, there are rules, but it's more so love rules is what I like to call them, because it's like I want you to do these things so not only that you can show the world who you are, but you're showing the world who I am through that. And so
mm,
I've had to learn that like along the way. So when you learn it as a kid, like you said, it's like you go to Sunday school, don't do that, God's watching, or like, stuff like that, especially in the South. Like that's the favorite quote, like God sees everything. And so it's like I had to really learn that for me, what did I want my obedience to be for? Like,
Mm,
did I want it to be because I'm afraid, or because I fearfully, like respectfully, fearfully, like love God, and
mm,
I want everything that He wants for me, and I want to let His light shine in the absolute best possible way that I personally can.
mm,
So it was definitely a tough route, and I'll say that because, like we said, we grew up in the South. There's always been one way to do church,
mm.
especially like South Baptist, like one way to do church, you know. And so just kind of learning over time, like what not only like religion and spirituality was for me, but like who God was to Ariel, and like not who God was to my mom, not to my sister, not to my grandmothers. Like, who is God to me? And that's not to say that I don't appreciate them for instilling it in me, because they gave me a seed. Like you said, they planted the seed. It was like, okay, like yeah, I do love God. Like that's they're not forcing me to love him, because
Mm,
I've seen him.
mm,
I know what he does in my life. I've seen
mm,
him work. But now, how do I see God when my mom isn't showing him to me? Like, how do I see him for myself? And
mm,
so that's kind of the bridge for me, that it's something that I still work on to this day, but it's been extremely helpful because it's my journey.
mm,
Like, it's not my mom's, it's not my grandmother's, it's mine.
mm. Yo, there was so many gems in that. There's so many of that. And actually, I want to keep the gas on this a bit because I think there's one thing you talked about, which is this reverent
Hmm.
fear, love piece, which is all mixed together. Where it's just like, because
Yeah.
of I love God, I want to express and I want to do this. I think a lot of times people resist the fear part, right? Where
Hmm.
it's just like I shouldn't fear
Yeah.
God. It's just like yeah, you should, right? Like,
Right.
but it's not like it's
Yeah.
like not in a bad way. But you also recognize that, but in so many other elements of our life, we actually have reverent fear and motivator, and I think sometimes that's where sports comes in to some degree. There is the
Hmm.
reverent fear of like, if I don't put in the work, I'm be out there looking a fool, right? Like, that's number one. There is the
Yeah.
coach piece of it, like,
Right.
I don't want to let down my coach. I don't want to let down my teammates. I fear
Hmm.
letting them down because there's an honoring of that. It brings me to the question of just how did you experience God, or experience God more deeply through playing
Hmm.
ball? Because I think a lot of people have this
Yeah.
perspective of like, I just need to be a good person and then I play basketball. But it's like, no, I think God infuses even just how you play the game, endure the game. So like, how
Hmm.
did God integrate into just your journey in ball?
Yeah. I mean, with anything in sports, it's how you treat people. And I
Mm,
think a lot of people don't really think about that piece. They're like, oh, yeah, they can hoop, but they're a terrible human, like
mm,
in all aspects. So I think for me, that's what I've been learning in my pro career, to be honest with you. Like, I've always tried to like get to these areas in life, like, where is God? Like, how do I see him? Just to, use that muscle,
mm,
like to appreciate those moments. Um, but definitely in how I treat people and how I prepare.
mm,
This is not something that you just look up on. Like, I'm part of the 1%. I'm a professional athlete, and on top of that, I'm a women's professional athlete playing basketball. Like, that's not a normal thing. It doesn't happen often, So I have to be very cognizant of what I'm doing with my gift, and I've been able to get better over time, but I've had to be consistent. I've had to be thankful. You have to be faithful. Like, you can't just all of a sudden wake up and you're good at something. It's like you have to find a way to be consistent. And in those
mm,
moments is where I really truly find God, because it's easy to just give up. It's easy to quit in the hard moments. And even in the good moments, it's like, oh, I'm doing good. Like, why do I need to focus on anything else? But when you really get down to it, like, my relationship with God is also based on, of course, love, but for me, consistency is really important.
mm,
And so I try to intertwine that in everything that I do. Of course, in sports, you have to be more consistent, because if you don't work out every day, get out of shape, can't perform, not using your gift, people can't see your light don't shine, like
mm.
all that kind of goes into it. So yeah.
I always throw this out, but it's like it's the best word. Like you say it so matter of fact, but it's so profound, right? It's like these
Yeah.
avatars of each other, like these mirrors of each other to say, well, I think
Yes.
consistency, faithfulness, right? As just a
Hmm.
character trait of someone, to do this life, you got to be faithful to, but just
Hmm.
this, I have to do that here because I see the impact and I see what's at stake And I don't I think this is so big because I think there's a view that this is still individual, right? You know, when you think about the WNBA, NBA, you know, you can see people's
Mhm.
faces. It's not the NFL. It's like
Mhm.
you see personalities, and so the thinking is, oh, it's about you, right? You know,
Right.
it's about you. Get your career, get your
Mhm.
overseas contract. You got your name on your stuff. Do
Yeah.
you while you're there? Get your points, get your buckets, get your this. But it's just like
Mhm.
you're bringing in a whole other perspective to say like it's a people, like my teammates
Yeah.
and how I influence them and how do I. That is real, and I think that's come more. As I said, I think that I've observed that come more to the surface. I'm pretty sure this has been some time,
Mhm.
especially over this past year. I would say, you know, what has for you was this moment, and this is Greenfield, but was this moment in time because you do speak, right? People are like, Theo speak, like
Mhm.
you do speak, right? You know,
Yeah.
was this more of a? Did you feel like it was a this like Moses stutter moment where it's just like God, I don't want to say nothing, but like I think you're telling me to step up and step into this, or you know what I mean? Like, was that the
Oh,
type of dynamic
100%.
that you're feeling?
Yeah. 100%. That whole day was just strange, to
Mm.
say the least. Um, but I definitely, it was definitely a God moment, and I can say that full heartedly because I didn't want to speak. I was literally crying right before that. I was ready
Mm.
to go. I was trying to get to the locker room, get my backpack. So I was like, I can get out of here. Like, I'm flustered, I'm stressed, like, and now I'm angry. Like,
Mm.
I don't get angry often. So when it happens, I'm like trying to process it all,
Mm.
like it's a lot for me. But then I just walked back into the gym and then my team was like just looking at me. And I'm like, what are y'all doing? Like, can we please leave?
Mm.
And they were just looking at me and they were like, come speak. And I'm like, that's how I knew it was a God moment because a lot of people don't think that I speak. And I
Mm.
speak. I just when I have something to say, I'll say it. If I have nothing to say, I'm not just about to talk just so people can get headlines, just so people
Mm.
can feel good about getting a report. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mm.
it has to be something that I want to speak on and I feel it deems necessary and it's relevant. And it'll actually be something that helps people and not just me talking out of my butt, honestly.
Mm. Mm.
Um,
Mm.
but it was definitely a God moment because I didn't want to speak, but they chose one of the most quiet people that they've known. Like my team knows me. I don't talk very much. But when I do talk, like I'll have conversations and stuff, but just publicly, there's not much that I always have to say. And so for them to choose me to be the one to speak, also was one of the younger ones. It just I felt good because in that moment I realized that they trusted me far beyond the court. And
Mm.
that's how I knew it was a God moment. Because when we talked about being consistent and how we treat people and how important that is, that was kind of one of those moments where it was like, yeah, like it had all came together at once. And I'm literally walking up to that mic like, God, I have no idea what I'm about to say.
Mm.
Like, because I'm not practicing this stuff.
Mm.
And at this point, I'm really mad. So I'm like, how am I going to say this, in a respectful, classy manner, but as well just be 100% honest.
Mm.
And I think people were able to kind of see that through what I said, and I for sure think that was a God moment because there ain't no other explanation for that. Like a lot of times, people see God moments, it's like they need a miracle, like bringing somebody back to life, and that was a small miracle that day for me because I really didn't want to talk to nobody, I didn't want to say nothing to nobody, I didn't want to see nobody. But to kind of have that big moment and for people to be like, wow, like seeing God in that light, because I'm not somebody who talks a lot, right? So they're like, what is she talking about? And so that's one of the moments where I'm just thankful that God allowed me to let his light shine on a stage like that. That's one of the biggest stages I've ever been on.
Mm. Yo, this is just for context, particularly for those who are listening, and just in view of just the protests, over the past year and what's happened, and
Mm-hmm.
people mixing up identities of people, and all of that stuff happening at the same time. You have this confluence of emotions. Of I'm experiencing this as somebody who is one of those who experienced this larger collective fallenness in this world. And on top of that, I have this nonsense I got to deal with, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm also being invited into a moment that I didn't draw up that play. I didn't drop that out of bounds
Right.
play, right?
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
I just first thing I think this piece is actually still very important even beyond that moment because you know it's just like you've heard that saying, it's kind of like preach the gospel when necessary, use words, right? Obviously I think there's, you can
Mhm.
pick that apart, right, a bit, but there's also this piece of the platforms you have to speak at all times. I think social media,
Mhm.
digital, is, I think, that of this times, and I think athletes are very particular. I think professional athletes,
Mhm.
one, because they have such a big platform, people follow them and they
Right.
listen. But also, there's people who kind of completely shy from it. There's been a lot of uproar about
Mhm.
people saying, "I ain't speaking to the press, I ain't did it," but it seems like there was such intention of using the platform you have to speak
Mhm.
on behalf of other people who may not be known, forgotten, and the like.
Mhm.
What was your prayer with God leading into that moment where it just said, like, all right, this is what I'm going to do? What was that? What was that
Mhm.
dynamic to make you make that decision to kind of dedicate your social media to that?
Um. Definitely, I just wanted to pass along visual aid in the way
Mm,
that we hadn't necessarily seen it. Like I didn't want a video. I didn't want anybody speaking. I wanted it to be just photos because just like it came from a sense of like just look, like just see.
mm,
Like that wasn't what I did on my Instagram during our season last year. That wasn't hard to do.
mm,
And it wasn't hard to do because the women weren't hard to find. And there were so many more. I think we had maybe 20 games, 22 games, somewhere around there. But that there were more. Like I could have made a post almost every single day of the year. Like it wasn't hard to do. And that was the part that really caught me off guard that I wasn't expecting to learn during that process. Is like, yo, this is like I know it's something that's really happening, but it is happening so often that like we could have every player in the WNBA post a name for game days. That's insane,
mm,
and it just blows my mind, and it's definitely tough because after a while, like the prayer goes from lead me to hold me,
ooh,
like
ooh,
please lead me and push me, to do whatever it is that you deem necessary, you need the world to see, or you need to use me for. To I'm starting to feel helpless. Like I'm
mm,
starting to feel like, what's the point? I'm
mm,
starting to feel like, will this ever end? And
mm,
so that was one of the tough parts about being in the bubble. And that feeling really fluctuated a lot from lead me, like help me push this, help me do this, help me lead my team, help me put this out in front, to what's the point? I need you to hold me, like please push me, like help me get out of bed, help me do well in this practice, like stuff that we could do every day kind of on autopilot. Everything just became so heavy. And it's like the more you learn, the more it's like I have so much respect for real social activists and the people that are on the ground doing this stuff because they have to deal with this stuff every single day. Like if I honestly wanted to, I could cut my TV off. I could try to shut my mind down because my job doesn't force me to look at the issues. Like I could easily just be a black woman in this world walking around trying not to see anything.
mm,
But for one, that's not who I am. That's not how I was raised. And that's not what God asked me to do. But it's heavy. Like it's heavy. And the fact that they're able to not only handle this, but to help families during this time. And it's just the families that are actually going through this are the extreme strong ones because not only are they living through this every day, they're the ones that are telling us to hold on. They're the ones that's telling us to stay faithful. There's the ones that's telling us to, stay hopeful and do these things in remembrance of their loved
mm,
ones. And so if they can do it, like, who am I?
this is yeah, this is just the context, get the context for people is just the protest of the past year, but ultimately, Ariel taking and using your social media to shed light upon the stories, the lives of real women who
Mm-hmm.
whose lives were taken. They didn't pass.
Taken.
Whose lives were taken from them, in many senses by institutions that were, I think, in spirit or letter, designed to protect them, but not really designed to protect them. Um, and
Mhm.
and so this is I think this is partly why, your work is so important, and also what you just said is so important, because I think all of us, regardless of whether you believe in God now and through Jesus or not, I think we get to a moment or moments of our lives where we recognize that all that I need, the world can't give me. Like when you get
Mhm.
to this place where you feel so overwhelmed and helpless, what are you drawing from when
Mhm.
the world has nothing to give you to comfort to? And I think people relating to that, you've articulated so well, of just like, it's like, just God hold me, but you at least could speak to somebody to do
Yeah.
that. Right, outside of the world that's falling apart, you're like, all right,
Right.
he's beyond this, so at least I'm hopeful that I could receive that care. What do people
Mhm.
do when there is nothing beyond a world, and the world is falling apart, and that's your only source? I think that is such gold, of what you do. I want to talk a bit about identity, a bit,
Mhm.
with this, because um, it takes a lot of faith to do what you're doing, right? I think people don't forget this thing, to say, I'm going to
Yeah.
dedicate my life to this every year, and
Mhm.
my work and what I'm able to do is dependent upon my body, that
Mhm.
is not imperishable yet. you know Things can
Mhm.
happen,
Right.
and I
Yeah.
can't do this for the rest of my life. Yeah, I
Right.
mean, I can't. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm gonna be 65 out here crossing people. So, like,
No.
you already have to wrestle with this idea of, like, who am
Mhm.
I beyond this? Who
Mhm.
will I be? Has that ever fallen on you like a ton of bricks? I can imagine through injury, stuff like that, where you're like, oh
Oh
my,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
Oh
what
yeah.
does that look like for you, navigating just your identity and figuring that out day to day, but also long term?
Yeah. Yeah. So my first years in playing, I've played basketball up until my freshman year of college, is when I had my first like major injury where I had to like sit out and basically not be on the team.
Mm,
The first time I ever like did touch a basketball for more than 3 days at a time since I
mm,
was 5 years old.
mm,
So talk about identity crisis when it comes to sports. Like I was the basketball player. When I walked in the gym, when I walked in the classroom, when I walked in the grocery store, oh, that's the little basketball player. You in the city, and it's the little basketball player. That's who I was. And of course, I am still a basketball player, but I had to separate that because when you don't have something that you solely rely on and it's tangible,
mm,
when you don't have it, it's like it's catastrophe
mm,
because you don't have it to hold on to. You don't have it to relax. You just can't go in the gym and shoot,
mm,
and technically when you're injured, well, when I was injured in college, my times would fluctuate so much to where I barely ever saw my team. So it was like now you don't even have teammates. So who do you have?
mm,
What do you have?
mm.
And it was really kind of mind blowing to me. And it was really hard because I've been doing the same thing every single day for the past 10, 12 years. It's like, so where do you go from there? And I'm glad that that happened to me early because it not only took my identity out of just it being the sport, it made me really realize that it's a gift. It's really a gift. It's not just one of them things like, oh, you just end up happening to be good. It's like, it really is a gift that can be taken away.
Mm,
And the gift isn't just being good at basketball. Like it took away relationships from some of my teammates that I didn't really get close to because I wasn't around. It took away me being able to build certain relationship with some of my coaches. It took away me being able to be on a stage, in front of showing people, this is who God is. Like
mm,
this is what it looks like when you take care of your body, when you do this, when you do that. So it was like, who are you? Who am I? And that's when I
mm,
really kind of got into God. It was just like, if this is something you want me to do, like, say something. Do like help me figure this out, man.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
cause I'm yeah, man, cause I'm out here like, oh yeah, this not it. I'm already having a tough time. And on top of having a tough time freshman year of college, it's everybody's tough, everybody has a tough freshman year of college. But on top of that, now I'm hurt. It's like I was supposed to be this, freshman of the year. Like, um, so
It's
sorry.
all good. Don't worry.
Like, are
Yeah,
you
I'm here.
back?
I'm here. Don't worry.
Okay. It's like I'm supposed to be freshman of the year. I'm supposed to do all these different types of things. And it's like nothing is going to happen now. And of course, in my head, I'm like, oh, my ankle's never going to be right ever again. I can't run on it. And then even coming back from my injury, I was just so unsure about absolutely everything. And it just kind of got to a point to where I'm in my identity. I'm figuring out my identity and you sifting through things. And it's like, what's the most constant thing?
Mm,
Well, for my faith and my family, like even basketball can leave. So it's like, okay, that can't be a part of who I am. So where does your identity lie? And it's like, well, even my family can leave. And it's like,
mm,
okay, what is the constant thing? Like when you get down to it, what is the most constant thing in your life day by day that you can always rely on, will never leave? And I'm telling myself all this stuff, and I'm like, and then scriptures start popping up from like when you're a kid, like, I'll never leave you nor forsake you, like all this type of thing. And it's like, yo, God really be there. Like the more you try to get away, like he really be there. And it's like that was a crazy moment for me because not only did I just really like get to lock into my identity, I got to be a part of something that would never leave me. And it's like I didn't have to worry
mm,
about if I never played basketball again. I didn't have to worry about if I was going to make the league. I didn't have to worry about push came to shove, God forbid, I would lose somebody super close to me. Like, I appreciate them. I'm thankful for them. And of course, I love them to my dearest heart. But at the end of the day, we have to think about all these things that are given to us can so much be taken away. So, what is one thing that I can be a part of that will never, ever, ever leave me? And I think that's where I've been able to kind of lock down on my identity. And it's
mm.
still tough because, we get attached to things easy. Um, but I've just had to learn over time like, you cannot put your identity in your sport. You cannot put your identity in your shoe game. You cannot put your identity in having, XYZ. So I've just learned over time, and that's not to say like I don't enjoy doing other things. I love doing other things, and I'm not 100% consistent, in my prayer time and my faith and my worship. But I know, like I know God is there. I know at the end of the day, no matter how I lived my day, I know that there's one thing that will always be constant. And I think finding my identity in that has been not only reassuring, but it's just like, like I can
Mm,
breathe. Like I can take that breather.
mm. Woo!
Yeah.
I'm gonna let that breathe. I'm gonna let that track breathe a little bit. I mean, this is. I think people need to hear that message now.
Hmm.
I think people's words been turned upside down, and this is just not a season thing. This is like life.
Right.
In this life
Yeah.
there will be trouble, right? There will be hardship. There will be suffering, and I
Hmm.
think there's a concentrated amount of suffering that we're experiencing. Though suffering has always been with us in the human experience,
Hmm.
and there are things that people have had to let go of, or it involuntarily was taken from them.
Right.
And so to hear this is it is real, and I think I can only imagine the notion without God in a time where, for example, I think I think you could appreciate this a bit more. I think athletes are like entrepreneurs in so many ways, right? Beyond just the what
Hmm.
maybe the first year contract, you like. I mean, after I done paid everybody
Yeah.
and paid my taxes, I was like, this ain't gonna go very far. This ain't gonna stretch, right? Like,
Yeah.
so
Right.
there's that part of like I gotta hustle out here to make sure. Oh,
Hmm.
I gotta get that. Boom! Gotta hit this Australian money. You gotta do whatever you gotta do. And then
Yeah.
there's the
Yeah.
flip side of I don't know what the bottom is. I don't know
Hmm.
what the end is. Meaning, coming from family entrepreneurs, you always sometimes believe in faith that you're just round the corner. Like you don't never want to be assumed as a quitter. Like I didn't
Yeah.
quit. I just kept going. It's bad now, but it's all you always are so optimistic that you could work through
Yes.
it and not end. I think as an
Hmm.
athlete, there's that view of like, am I supposed to hang it up? All right, should I keep going? Am I
Yeah.
not? Is this at my time? I think obviously going through the injury that you've been through, but how do you even just wrestle with just the let's just say security? There's identity, but then there's
Hmm.
the security part of like, all right, I'm doing well, relatively speaking, but like
Hmm.
I can't just retire, right? Like, I just
Right.
so how do you
Yeah.
navigate that without kind of making yourself run wild in your head of like, Lord help me,
Yeah.
help me, help me.
Right. It's tough. It's something I'm dealing with like today,
Mm,
like to this day. Like it's something that I'm working on. It's how do I build a life outside of basketball? So once I do end up retiring, I don't have to scramble.
mm,
I can just, all right, put more time into my other business ventures.
mm,
So it's definitely an interesting feat, and it is a little scary at first when you think about it because it's like, all right, well, what can I do? I've been playing basketball my whole life, but never really had a job. So, like, how do I put what I've learned over my time as being an athlete into whatever else the world does?
mm, mm,
But then on top of that, my parents, they both work for themselves. So like you said, I've always had the mentality like it'll work out as
mm.
long as I figure out a way to work hard, um, make those connections, create those networks. At the end of the day, like I'm gonna figure it out because that's what we do. Like my
Mm.
past, what my parents have always done. I've never had a moment of like, dang, we ain't got it. It's like we got a little something. As long as we got a little something, we got enough.
Mm.
So definitely from my parents as well.
Yeah, that's a word. I mean, like it's like the daily manna. It's not like you saw the storage, waiting for the Uber Eat. It's kind of like, now I'll give you it on the
Yeah.
day, right? Like, so
Right.
when that time
Exactly.
comes,
Yeah.
right now you're fully present, ball out.
Hmm.
When that time comes, it will be there, right? And so I
Yeah.
think that is dope to hear. I have to use this time to beyond the stepping having your voice amplified at such levels. I think across the board, the energy, a lot of the movement energy of the time
Hmm.
was kicked off by especially in sports by the WNBA. But it's just like it was like
Hmm.
the shirts was out early,
Yeah.
right? Like these things were out early, and so so I'm like, oh, you guys, let's not have revisionist history. This was really really drawn there. I say that to say, um, even with this conversation about what beyond, I do
Hmm.
think um, there's a prescience to to your voice. Even you speaking now, you're teaching. You say it very much like you're
Oh,
teaching. I'm not saying ministry. I'm just saying that you're teaching in
yeah.
a way that I think people need
Thank you.
to hear. I want to ask you two things. One, can you is there a unique place? I think sports has always been this place, this battleground, so to
Hmm.
speak, hmm, for voices or just around what's happening in the world. Like kind of music has been, rap music has been. Okay, I'm communicating what's happening in the world because y'all don't want to get it there. I'm gonna
Hmm.
communicate it through here. Do you believe?
Right.
Do you believe one? Your kind of your role in that moving forward, right? Do you feel like I don't know that yet? And two, do you believe that like there's such a marketplace way to go, right? Again, we're not
Hmm.
so much removed from Kaepernick and everything, but do you believe that there's such a big place to go and you want to be a part of that? Like, I know that's a big question, but I would love to see you pick that
Yeah.
apart a bit.
What do you mean as far as a big marketplace to
Yeah,
go?
meaning, do
Like
you feel
it's
that there's
like,
still a great opportunity for
hmm,
organizations, let's just say WNBA, NBA, you don't have to speak directly to the name, but to do
hmm.
more to support and
Oh,
in the community.
yeah.
So that's what I'm thinking. It's a big question. It's an
Oh
obvious one,
yeah.
but just would love to see your thoughts.
Oh yeah. Yeah. 100%. I think as players, that's something that we've been trying to figure out. I know I'll just speak specifically to my team. Like we've been trying to figure out how our organization could help not only like move forward but empower the DC community.
Mm,
Um, and that's just starting local because that's what I know. That's what I'm a part of. But even speaking bigger to larger organizations, there's some organizations that they'll speak out. They'll make the post. They've given donations and different things like that. But we've got to figure out a way to not only just support but to empower. I think
Mm.
that's really a big step in it, and it's something that I'm also trying to figure out. Like, I mean, as much as I would love to talk about how much we want to support, comes a time when you actually got to do it. You know what I'm saying? So, trying to figure out what it is that I personally can do to support the DC, Dallas community, the Black community as a whole,
Mm.
tangibly though, because as much as we love more support, it feels good. People need jobs though. People need food. People need houses. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's stuff that we can do that can help not only get people on their feet, but give us a leg forward. And I think that's what we need. We need to find a way to push our community forward, and not just in t-shirts, and not just in posts, and not just in sayings. And not to say none of that stuff matters, because it does. Any type of visual aid, visual representation of support, and love is important. But at the end of the day, we gotta live here. So how do we, how do we make it the best possible way that we can? And then there is the whole other side of it, as far as like policies, laws, and bills and different things that we need to learn about. We need to educate ourselves. Like, and that's another thing that I have to tell myself. Like, you have to read. Like, you have to figure this stuff out. And not in the sense that I need to be able to do it to spit information to somebody, but I need to know it for myself. Like, I need to know what the number to the Attorney General's office is, so that I can talk about, asking them, like, are they going to pass the George Floyd law, bill? Like, that is small stuff like that that you can really help and educate yourself. And it may not mean like a lot to you, but it's something that you learn, that that you can teach the person to the right and to the left of you. And it builds from there.
Mm. Mm.
So yeah,
Mm.
there's a lot that we can do, a whole lot.
Mm.
But you can't do it, like, just do one thing first. And I think that's what I'm trying to tell myself right now, because it's like there's so many issues that I'm just like, we need to fix this. We need to fix this. This is great. So it's like, what is one thing that I can do that I know my organization can help me to help build our community in DC as a whole? And it's like, you even get smaller than that. Are we talking about single household, single parent households? Are we talking about kids? Are we talking about education? Like, just getting down to the small thing, so that it can actually affect some type of change, and not just disperse all of our resources to where everybody gets one penny.
I mean, I think it's a word for just people now experiencing,
Yeah.
I'm taking this, and I want to take this beyond, because I think this ties into just God in your life, because I,
Mhm.
I think we're in this information overload era, right? There's so much
Mhm.
information, so much, and then like if you're gifted, you could do a lot of things, right? Like you can do
Yeah.
everything. Like you can do, like I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. But there's some wisdom to your point around, like, I'm overwhelmed, but like what is one good thing I could do? And I'm also speaking to
Mhm.
myself, right? Like, I was a multi-vendor, even in
Yeah.
I was like I could do multiple things well, like, but
Yeah.
how do I have the most? How do you have the most impact for the time? And because of that, I think this part of the story, I have to ask you this question, which is,
Mhm.
because of your schedule, right? And some of it is like kind of built in because of the nature. I got to be practice. I got to be
Mhm.
at lifts at this. I got to be at film at this time. Like,
Right.
I got to be in treatment. Yeah. What? Yeah, I didn't want to. I
All
didn't want
that.
to lead that way. It's like, oh gosh.
Yeah.
But what, sorry. Uh, what is your, if you had just a day to yourself, what would be
Mhm.
your ideal, like, what's your ideal rhythm with God? What would it look like? I think we're getting back to the trees now.
Ooh.
We're getting back to the
Yeah.
trees and the nature now. But like, if you had the day to
Yeah.
yourself, sun up to sun, yeah, I mean, what
Mhm.
would be your ideal rhythm with God?
Ooh. Um, Taking me completely out of, like, if I wasn't afraid to go into the woods by myself, let's say that for one. I don't even
Mm.
like going hike by myself. People crazy out here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Blair Witch
But if
life.
I could go
Yeah.
out into a forest by myself and just like sit and be still and listen, like, that is my favorite thing to do with God, is to just sit down. Like, I've had to, I kind of have to give myself grace for reading the Bible, because a
Mm.
lot of times I just feel myself reading. And it's not really like, I don't take the time to stop and digest and do all these things. But I've noticed when I just like sit with God, and specifically outside,
Mm.
it's different, man. Like it's just refreshing. I get to breathe and I just get to like listen. And I don't be hearing nothing. I ain't gonna lie to y'all. I don't hear God's voice saying, Ariel, do this,
James Earl
it's
Jones
just
voice,
my
nah.
moment. Yeah, nah, I don't hear that. It's just my moment to sit and feel his presence and to feel the Holy Spirit just like using me and leading me. And I feel like that moment it centers me and it
Mm,
gives me a chance to reset and let go whatever I need to let go and bring in whatever needs to be brought in. But definitely sitting somewhere out in nature, just chilling, breathing.
mm. Yeah, it's dope to know. I was like asking that question because I think it just you get to know someone really well by just
Yeah,
kind of how they connect. You also know when you gotta leave them alone, so they didn't have the time.
yeah,
At the time, yo,
for sure.
Ariel, I am so thankful for you. This has been dope, and obviously, I know this won't be the only conversation we'll ever have, but
Right.
you are so refreshing to speak to, and also you just the wisdom, the precision of how you think, and how you see the importance of community, family, your faith, but recognizing where it stands. The fact that you are in the position for such a time as this, that God has given you a space to speak. You in particular is giving you an opportunity to play in an amazing league and do what you do. I'm just thankful you're where you are and that the people that you influence get you. And so I think on behalf of brothers and
Thank
sisters
you.
who will hear this and see this, thank God for you. Thank God for you. Thank God for
Thank
keeping
you.
you. You're great. And just know you got champions. You got brothers and sisters out here who's just like
Yeah.
they see you and they're like, nah, we're gonna pray, continue to cover her. But I pray that God continue to give her opportunity to continue to serve him in your role. And so this was a gift to us. Thank you for letting us in and sharing this
Oh,
part of your story.
thank you. Thank you for having me on. Nobody ever really asked you about the God story, so this is awesome, man. I really appreciate what you're doing too.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We got to stick together. A little how longhorns. We got to stick
Yeah.
together. You know what I'm saying? Let me stop. Let me stop. I ain't gonna leave it on that. But no. But you're my sister. You're my sister. Before we had a conversation, and that's what it's gonna be. So I'm so thankful for you. And yeah, we're gonna pray that we find these jerseys out here, and that's the other conversation. But my sister, we love you. I love you as a sister, and continue to press forward. All right, take care.
Awesome. Will do.
All
Thank you
right.
so much. You